times a day trying to put a voice to what I think is the national outrage over being bankrupt.
Gary, you know, they've been kind of down on me for a number of years, and I actually think that you saved my life back there in New Mexico. They listed me in guide to right-wing extremists, and I made 2 phone calls. The first was to you, and you told me not to worry about it.
I think you've been a terrific voice, Clay, and I just appreciate your voice.
Well, the second phone call I made was to the chief of the state police at that time, and he told me the same thing. He said, "Don't worry about it, Clay." And I said, "You and the governor keep telling me that, but I think somebody's trying to kill me out there, and that may be easy for you guys to say, but I'm worried about it." He said, "Clay, I've been reading your magazine for 10 years. You don't have a thing to worry about from me or any of my men. And besides that, the governor just recalled every one of those booklets put out by the Phoenix FBI, Guide to Right-Wing Extremists." But Gary, it's happening.
I think we've got issues in this country right now that must address. I think we could be at the verge of a collapse of our government, and that would be very simply a European country this Friday coming to market with its debt, and no one signing up for that debt, no one wanting to buy that debt, and that could be the domino that would lead to really an economic collapse worldwide. I just believe that we have an opportunity right now to right the financial ship, and that we could slash spending in this country, and that we could look to reducing taxes as opposed to spending going up across the board and taxes going up across the board.
It was amazing to me. The last thing George Bush did was pass out $2 trillion to the very banksters that that supposedly own the Federal Reserve. I mean, that was just a huge theft to me. Why weren't the American people as outraged as I was about that?
Well, and of course, Republicans controlled Congress. They controlled the White House, and they also gave us a prescription health care benefits, which I had hoped when Republicans took over that Republicans might actually take a hard look at all these entitlements and actually address all this entitlement spending.
Now, I mentioned the fact that I was included in this booklet called Guide to Right-Wing Extremists, but the ADL and SPLC have been doing the same thing to the Tea Parties, Gary. I mean, this is not somebody. These are not people that are doing talk shows and publishing magazines. You know, I can understand them being upset with me, but they're going after the average person that's going to the Tea Party that feels pretty much the same way that you and I do about the direction our government's going in.
Well, and I think a Ron Paul sticker also qualifies in that same category, doesn't it?
Yes, it did.
Cool. Awfully scary.
The MIAC, and the MIAC, that was the Missouri Fusion Center. Now, most Americans don't even know that we've got fusion centers in every state, and that was instigated by Senate Bill 1959, House Bill 1955, the Homegrown Terrorist Act. They have set these fusion centers up, which are basically, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, this is a way to integrate the federal government into the state and local police, which is exactly what that booklet that you recalled from New Mexico was trying to do.
Well, and of course, what you're pointing out is that the federal government is trying to intrude in all areas of state government when the exact opposite ought to be occurring. States ought to be the laboratories of innovation. I'm a firm believer in the 10th Amendment, and the less federal government federal government dictates by the consent of the states, not the other way around. And we've gotten it backwards. I'm hoping that healthcare gets overturned, in that the federal government is telling us as states how to run our healthcare systems. It goes on and on and on. Education, healthcare, talking about law enforcement. The trend is exactly the wrong direction relative to the Constitution of the United States.
Gary, I've been studying history, and since I left New Mexico, I have continued my education. I'm working on my master's degree in political science. But I see the same thing happening in America that happened in the Soviet Union. And in another aspect, what happened in Germany. I mean, the German people were targeted, and we had a war going on. Even the Tea Party, while they're being demonized on one hand, we've got people like Sarah Palin, another former governor, who's calling for war with Iran. I mean, what's going on with that? Have you got any input and insight into what's happening with the Tea Parties? Have they been infiltrated by teocons?
Well, I think it's, and I know you point it out all the time, that we're not a democracy here. We're a constitutional republic. We're a nation governed by laws, not by vote. And if you have a country that's mandated by vote, well, what you end up with are people that vote themselves a raise. And that's really what we've gotten to in this country. I would argue that our defense, that our security is not being threatened in Iraq or Afghanistan. I thought that originally when we went into Iraq that we didn't need to do that, that we could have seen Iraq roll out any weapons of mass destruction. We could have gone in and dealt with that with a military surgical strike. I thought that if we went into Iraq, we would find ourselves mired in a civil war to which there would be no end. I thought Afghanistan, at the very start, I thought that was completely warranted. I thought that was a military strike against Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, but they're not there anymore. So we're building roads, schools, bridges, highways, and hospitals in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're nation building throughout the world. Don't we have our own nation to build? And so when it comes to Iran and their nuclear threat, I think that we should be wary of that nuclear threat. But going in, this is something that we don't have to do. And I also believe that Israel is an ally, will remain a military ally, and they will be looking out for their best interests. And so it's a situation that needs to be monitored, but going in, I don't see that. I see that completely on par with what we did in Iraq, and we've seen what's happened there.
Now, all of these wars, and by the way, Afghanistan, and this kind of relates to the subject that I want to talk to you about, so we invaded Afghanistan for a couple of reasons. One, we were supposed to looking for Osama bin Laden, a man that wasn't there and probably has been dead for a number of years. But those nasty old Taliban, Gary, they were destroying the opium poppy crops in Afghanistan. And we couldn't have that, so our soldiers are guarding the opium poppy crops there, but we're still putting people in prison here that might be using heroin. What's the deal?
Well, I've been an outspoken advocate for legalizing marijuana, believing that controlling it, regulating it, taxing it would bring about rational drug policy in this country. I just don't believe that the fact that we're arresting 1.8 million people a year in this country has had any effect whatsoever on drug use. And what it's resulted in is that we now have 2.3 million people